Hello and welcome to day 79 of the Not Alone Today Chronological Bible Reading Plan with Joseph and Anu. Today we're starting the book of Ruth. We'll be reading chapters 1 to 4 using the New International Version UK.
As is our custom, just before we delve fully into the book of Ruth, just to give a summary, we are reading the entire book. It's just 4 chapters. And in that, we see the story of Ruth, by whom the book is named. It's set in the time of the Judges. So this also happened in those days, in the similar timeline as we see many of the things we read in the book of Judges. Tells the story of this family that relocated from Bethlehem to Moab, the family of Elimelech and Naomi. And while in Moab, which is a foreign territory where they are not supposed to intermarry, or while in Moab, they gave wives to their sons from amongst the Moabites, one of them named Ruth. Eventually, both Ruth and Naomi became widows. In other words, Elimelech died, and then the husband of Ruth, which is one of the sons of Naomi, in fact, both sons of Naomi died. And Ruth decides to claim loyalty to the God of Naomi by saying she will return with Naomi to Bethlehem. Now, the famine in Bethlehem was over. Naomi returned, and Ruth began to live with her there. And while in Bethlehem, this Moabitess lady would eventually find herself working on the field of a man named Boaz, who happened to be a kinsman to the family of Elimelech. And so Naomi will guide Ruth to urge Boaz to actually play the role of a kinsman redeemer and redeem her in that sense. And that's what eventually happened. Of course, different twists and plots to that story. And then the book ends with a bit of genealogy to help us trace the lineage from Ruth all the way to David. Because when we flip the page after Ruth into 1 Samuel, it's only a few chapters before we begin to encounter the story of Israel's most significant king by the name of David. So yeah, Ruth closes with that genealogy to make that connection for us. But we'll begin with chapter 1.
Chapter 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there.
Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband.
When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah.
Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband."
Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people."
But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grow up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me."
At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her.
"Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her."
But Ruth replied, Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her.
So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?"
Don't call me Naomi, she told them. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me.
So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning.
Chapter 2. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz.
And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor."
Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech.
Just then, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you."
"The Lord bless you," they answered.
Boaz asked the overseer of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?"
The overseer replied, "Oh, she is the Moabite who came from Moab with Naomi." She said, "Please let me glean and gather from your sheaves behind the harvesters." She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter.
So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting, and follow along after the other women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled."
At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She asked him, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?"
Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. How you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with the people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge."
"May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my lord," she said. "You have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servants."
At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here. Have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar."
When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his man, "Let her gather among the sheaves and don't reprimand her. Even pull out some stock for her from the bundle and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her."
So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. She carried it back to town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough.
Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you."
Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one at whose place she had been working. "The name of the man I worked with today is Boaz," she said.
"The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead." She added, "That man is our close relative. He's one of our guardian redeemers."
Then Ruth the Moabite said, "He even said to me, 'Stay with my workers until they finish harvesting all my grain.'"
Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, because in someone else's field you might be harmed."
So Ruth stayed close to the women of Boaz to glean until the barley and wheat harvests were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law.
Chapter 3. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you, where you'll be well provided for." Now, Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight, he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you're there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he's lying, then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do.
"I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do.
When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet.
"Who are you?" he asked.
"I am your servant, Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you're a guardian redeemer of our family."
"The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you're a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I'm a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning."
So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, "No one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor."
He also said, "Bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out." When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town.
When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?"
Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her, and added, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'"
Then Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest on the matter settled today."
Chapter 4. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there, just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down.
Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here," and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to a relative, Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so, but if you will not, tell me so I will know, for no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line."
"I will redeem it," he said.
Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property."
At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it."
Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel.
So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself," and he removed his sandal.
Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses."
Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah."
So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth."
Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David.
This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. So today we read the book of Ruth. In chapter 1, we are told of how Naomi loses her husband and sons after they've relocated to Moab. And then Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem after the Lord brought the famine over there to be over. Orpah, by the way, returned to her own people in Moab and to her gods. In chapter 2, Ruth meets Boaz in the field. She just happened to land on the field that belongs to Boaz as the place from where she gleaned. And that led on to a conversation. And by the time she returned to give the account to her mother-in-law, Naomi, she then remembered that actually Boaz is a kinsman redeemer for their family. And so she instructed her on what next to do. And so in chapter 3, we saw Ruth and Boaz at the threshing floor, Ruth acting out the instructions she has been given by Naomi, which is simply a way to make Boaz know that she's available to be redeemed and that Boaz is a fitting kinsman redeemer. And then in chapter 4, Boaz marries Ruth. Of course, he first of all took the matters to the gates and engaged the kinsman redeemer that was even closer to the family of Elimelech. And when that one rejected the offer to redeem not only the land but also Ruth, then Boaz stood in to redeem the property, both the property that belongs to Naomi's husband as well as to Ruth, to continue the family name. And the book ends with that, the chapter ends with that genealogy from Perez, one of the ancestors of Boaz, all the way down to David, whose story we'll get into in the book of 1 Samuel.
So in chapter 1, what stood out to me was Naomi's motivation for returning to Judah. In that, it was only when she heard that the Lord has come to the aid of his people by providing food to her that she and her daughter-in-laws prepared to return home from there. When her husband died, there was no preparation to go back. When her 2 sons died, there was no preparation to go back. But when she heard that there was provision in Israel, she then returned. I might feel it's selfish, but everyone has to look out for themselves. But that just stood out to me when I was reading it. And then the second thing that stood out to me in this chapter was how that she urged her daughter-in-laws to return. But it was the 3 of them in verse 6 that prepared to return. And it was the 3 of them in verse 7 that left together. Why then she then tell them after the preparation and packing of bags to say, go back to your family home? Again, Naomi's character to me read as cunning. She's a woman who knows how to put certain things in place to gain the best advantage. Why she said this to her daughter is unclear. Yet when she got to Bethlehem, when she told the women not to call her Naomi and call her Mara, it can be read, it can be inferred that the reason she didn't want her daughter-in-laws to go with her was so that maybe they wouldn't see how low she's become when she returns back to her hometown. Or maybe her status would change from where she was in Moab to where in Israel. It's not clear. And she didn't make it clear why she told them to return after they had prepared to go together.
I thought she did, but the reason she gave literally in the text is that she came to the realization that actually, what's the point? If you go with me, even if I eventually find a husband, I don't think I would get one. I'm too old to marry again. But let's say I got back home and got married again and have a son right now. Are you going to wait until that son grows old? Like, it's pointless. It is already, quote and unquote, bad enough that we had married you from your people. And I think by us saying return to your people and to your gods, signify that now that they've married into Naomi's family, they probably had been detached from their gods. And of course, now she's saying, you won't fit in. So let's send you back in that sense. I mean, that's what I thought anyways. Whether or not she had ulterior motives, I wouldn't know. It's not impossible. But what stood out to me really in the chapter, beginning from the opening words, is maybe because I've always known there are a few Hebrew words that I know their meanings. One of them is Bethlehem, and I know Bethlehem means house of bread. And for there to be famine in the house of bread is an irony in and of itself, which again fits back into that opening statement, in the days when the judges ruled. These were the days when, according to the book of Judges, there was no king in Israel. Everybody did what they liked. And it is in that same context that one man living in the house of bread, experiencing famine, decided that the best response to this famine is to relocate. And I'm seeing that in the context of, this massive wave of migration, especially emigration from places in Africa. I think of Nigeria, for example, so much so that in the past couple of years, there's a word that has been used to capture that migration experience. We say people japa. In other words, they, in some sense, escape from Nigeria with no intention to return, is what the word could etymologically be broken down to mean. But be that as it may, the story of Elimelech is instructive in the sense that we don't want to take something as pivotal as migration just on the whims of everyone is doing it, or on the whims of logic. There is a place of God ordering our steps in the unfolding events of our migration. Migration is more or less inevitable. It's a fact of life. It has been around as old as time. People have always had to move from place to place, and will continue to have to move from place to place. But we want to be sure that our steps are being ordered by the Lord. I remember our reflection on day 56 about how some people respond to or consult fortune tellers, and they take their decisions based on what fortune tellers are saying, or they are led by the fear of tomorrow. We shouldn't be those kind of people. And fortune tellers in this case can now become, the Western powers of the Western nations that people migrate to, United States, United Kingdom, Canada. They are calling you to say, there is green grass on this side. And then, of course, many people have responded to such anticipations only to find themselves now in those foreign lands and regretting the decision to move. Basically just that necessity to be ordered by God, guided by God in all of our lives' journeys, even in all of our migration stories, is what stood out to me in that first chapter.
Oh, that's very rich and very balanced. So in chapter 2, what stood out to me is verse 2, in that it was Ruth that made that decision to go to the fields and pick up the leftover grains behind anyone in whose eyes she finds favor. And it reads to me that Ruth understood the culture of the Israelites.
Yeah,
she understood it. She knows what to expect. So it wasn't Naomi that said, oh, my daughter, this is what happens here, or do this. She knew what to expect and did as and used that knowledge to wisely deduct what's left for her to do. If you all remember when we read Deuteronomy chapter 21,
Yes.
we talked about how that God is very fair in how that He leaves provision for women or for people who are the minority. In that, when the Israelites, if they've gone to another country to wage war against them, and they bring women back as part of their plunder, they said that the woman should be allowed to mourn for a full whole month before the man is allowed to have sex with her and before he's allowed to make her his wife. And that if the man was not delighted in her, he can let her go. But we had already read in previous chapters on how that God has made provisions for people like that, for foreigners, for widows, for, I don't know if there's orphans. So minor people, He's made provisions for them. And it is this provision that Ruth tied into, in that she knows that as a widow, she has some entitlement in the land that she's in. And that's where she told her mother-in-law, let me go and glean after the harvesters. And I found that so pure, so feisty. And it's just beautiful to know that in spite of your loss, to know what you're still entitled to, and to own that faith with works made alive.
Indeed. For me, in chapter 2, it's verse 3, that the phrase, as it turned out. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz. It sounds like coincidence, like, it just so happened, as I think the KJV puts it, and it so happened. It's not happenstance at the end of the day. We can see that even in this unfolding story, the hand of God is all over it. The hand of God is all over, and Ruth as a person, and of course over the story and the generations that will emerge from her. That's where we're going to get David down the line, and eventually Jesus further down the line will come from that lineage. So God was involved in this story, in as much as there had been tragedies in chapter 1. There is already a restoration in place, and it's beginning to happen with God acting behind the scenes, it seems. Chapter 3, anything stood out to you?
In chapter 3, what stood out to me is the first two words where it says, one day, Ruth's mother-in-law said to her, I must find a home for you where you'll be well provided for. And it reads to me that there's been a length of days from when Boaz approved her to start gleaning in his field and she came home to this present time where Naomi thought, it's time for you to be well provided for. The practical application I got there is being able to pay attention, not to be too familiar with kindness. There's some people that come to our life where they're continually kind to us, like even where we don't deserve it. But sometimes because of familiarity, we just take them for granted. Examples are our husbands, our children. I'm speaking from a wife's perspective, where the things they do continually. I know in this age of we are equal at the hip and everything, we might take things for granted to say, Shebi is doing his own, I'm doing my own, that we are all in this together. But on a daily basis, there's just a need for us to, there's a thing in Yoruba called Oshuba. In my head, there's written as though Oshuba should only be for God, because the only Oshuba I've known is given to God in the song. Oshubare mare. But on daily occasion, or if as much as you can, there's just a need to stand before your husband and just twist out your arms together and give him that Oshuba to say, well done. Thank you for what you've done. Even where, if my husband is laughing, even where you've been angry with them, they've done something to upset you, there's still that element of them doing above and beyond. And even for our children, so obviously we can't give Oshuba to our children, but calling them names of honor, my prince, or even presenting their food in a way befitting of a prince, setting the table, clean the table for them. You might still shout at them in the next minute like I do, but just that short burst of honor here and there to make the person know that I do not take you for granted. I see what you're doing. And when I read Ruth chapter 3 verse 1, that's what I saw. I saw Naomi actually looking at her daughter again to say, you deserve better than this. Because if she wanted to be selfish, she would choose to make Naomi remain in her home, where Naomi would continue to serve her until she died. But she looked beyond her needs to Naomi's own need to say, you need a home where you'll be well provided for, not just providing for me, but someone else doing it for you. And that was quite instructive for me.
That's good. In chapter 4, of course, the bigger picture here, we know the story of Ruth as the story of the kinsman redeemer, the kinsman redeemer being Boaz, and that's where the drama was literally acted out. But there are certain things that also then, there are symbols here and there that can point to the nearer kinsman redeemer being the law and Boaz representing God's grace. For instance, in verse 2, it says Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town. 10 is the number of the law, 10 commandments. And then, of course, it will go on to make it look initially, the other guy, the other relative that was a nearer kinsman redeemer, he has the capacity to redeem, but he was not willing to do it. The moment he heard that not only are you going to get the land, you're also going to get the Moabite, he didn't want that. And Bible says literally in verse 6, I cannot do it. It says, you redeem it yourself, I cannot do it. As though there is an incapacity, there is a limitation to the capacity of the law to redeem us. And this is what Paul will go on to unpack fully in many of his epistles, especially in Romans, in Galatians, in Ephesians. The law cannot save us. But not only is Boaz able in terms of capacity, he was also willing, and that's what we see with Jesus. Grace and truth came in Jesus, and he is ever so willing to redeem us. Not only is he able to do it, he's very willing to do it. And that story of redemption rings through. And I look forward to when we dive into 1 Samuel and begin to see one character that would also point us further and further in that regards, in the person of David.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Any concluding thoughts?
No.
All right, so tomorrow we flip the page. We start a new book. That's day 80 in this journey. And we look forward to having you with us. But till then, just remember,
you're not alone.
Today,
God bless you very much.